Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am one of your normal three hosts, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. Joined tonight by another one of our normal regular three co-hosts, Mr. Kendall Mirsky. Kendall, how are you? Especially considering Eric has left us to fend for ourselves. How do we feel about that? Pretty upset.
Oh, just swell, just absolutely dandy, feeling great, just bearing the load of responsibility that is Buffalo Bills training camp. No, I mean, it's nice to talk about training camp though, like on the cusp of the first preseason game. It is exciting to talk about all of that. So I will say that much, but he left us high and dry again. And I mean, sooner or later, he's going to have to pay for it.
I mean, he will. I mean, you will as well. You've stabbed us in the back quite.
Fair point.
Quite. That's a nice comment. The show will be great. Just the two of you. You have no idea. This is going to be a train wreck. This is funny. Film room in this climate. Well played. Well played. Man, I can't believe I said this when you were on Disguise coverage a couple of weeks ago. And, because obviously this episode, we're going to be talking about stock up, stock down when it comes to training camp. And it's even why that we're still here, like talking about training camp, but then also that we're leading into like part of why we wanted to do stock up and stock down is to shift focus either positively or negatively, unfortunately, towards players or position groupings as we move towards this preseason game on Saturday against the Colts. So that way everybody knows, okay, who do I need to watch? What situations and scenarios? But it's still crazy to me that I felt that last week at the scrimmage, like football is here. And then last Thursday, there was the Hall of Fame game, and we're already on the cusp of the regular season. A month from now, we will actually, because the Bills, Thursday, September 9th. No, Thursday the 8th is opening night.
Oh, okay. Either way.
But we're basically, literally, either way. We're a month away. That's wild, how fast it just came up out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, it slapped you in the face because you've been attending stuff live. I've really only seen 30 minutes of the Hall of Fame game. And then I was just like, this kind of sucks. Dipped out of that game. So, I mean, it's going to slap me in the face to see them play the Colts. It's coming up. I'm really excited for that. Thank you for that comment. I see that.
Yeah, you getting some respect there for your draft coverage. I thought your coverage was subpar, but I mean, again, that's just me.
What else would you think?
Yeah, you're terrible. But regardless, nonetheless, that's a great lead-in, right? The guy I'm with tonight sucks, but you guys should stick around and watch us talk ball.
Stick around and watch me just absolutely hate on this guy the whole time.
Stick around and watch me verbally annihilate the person to the right of me on this screen. But no, tonight, I'm excited for this episode because there's been I think you get a lot of talk and a lot of gamesmanship, whether it's in beat coverage or people reading reports from other people and then parroting those reports. And either way, you get a lot of talk that can either be potentially misleading or isn't broken down in the way of what does it mean from a technical standpoint? What does it mean schematically? X's and O's. A lot of it is just hey, Timmy looked great today on the field. And it's how did Timmy look great? How did Timmy not look great? Is it sustainable? What's the context? Let's put it all together. That's what we're going to add here on tonight's episode. And so the focus, for those of you who don't know, again, Buffalo Bills training camp, stock up, stock down, risers, fallers, whatever verbiage you guys and girls want to use. We're going to be looking at position groupings, players, and talking about literally what the episode's titled, people who have their stock trajecting upwards, people who have their stock, unfortunately, trending downwards, why we have them trending up or down, and what it means going forward, but particularly what it means for this Saturday against the Indianapolis Colts in terms of what you need to be watching for and why you need to be watching for those things. It's a really good way to kind of sum up a lot of training camp performances up until this point, but also set the table again for the preseason game, which is at 4:00 on a Saturday, which I also don't like. It feels weird.
Yeah, it's a weird
I don't understand. I don't know why it is a weird time. And also, this will be the last film room of the offseason, basically that does not, well, actually the last film room of the offseason, because once preseason starts, it's really in season mode. But this will be the last one with basically without official all 22 footage in an episode, which is also tremendously exciting. At this time next week, we hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have film from Saturday's preseason game breaking things down, and just getting into our, regular season rhythm and routine. And I'm very excited for that. And Kendall, I know you're equally excited. I can
I am
see
so excited for film, like 2022 film. I'm beyond excited.
2022, all 22.
It just flows.
Look at
It's
us.
just natural. It's
Look at us.
organic. You
Look at
just
us.
gotta eat it up. So I'm really excited for that. Like next week's film room is gonna be really fun. Whatever it is we decide to pick apart, it's gonna be entertaining because it's going to give an extra layer to the analysis of who could or won't make this roster. What does this mean for this player? Is he on the
Yes.
bubble? All of that stuff just even boiled down into just one play. It can kind of actually be extrapolated and show you a lot about that player's body of work through the training camp. Because, yeah, like you said, we're being fed a lot of, I mean, to be fair, we need those beat reporters. We need all of that stuff because without it, we don't have a lot of content to consume. I'm speaking as someone in the West Coast. It's tough for me to consume training camp content other than that. So it's really, really advantageous to get that film finally, see them playing not against their teammates, but against others and really showing that aggression, seeing if they wear that identity as the aggressors this year, all of that stuff. I'm really excited for film.
Real football, real action, real stuff to dissect and break down. And we set the table for that tonight with this episode of the Film Room. As you guys know, and girls know, here on Cover One, we are very much encouraging of and appreciative of all forms of engagement in whatever form they come in. So if you are listening or watching right now here on YouTube, please drop a like on this video. If you're listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate and review, subscribe to the Cover One Film Room, subscribe to Cover One and the Film Room on YouTube as well. If you're here, drop a like. And also in terms of engagement, if you are here with us live in this episode, what we're going to do here, we're going to go position group by position group, starting on the offensive side of the ball. Some will talk more than others because some have more things to talk about, some have less, but we want your risers and fallers. Some of you have already been doing it in the chat before we even went live on this episode, talking about Isaiah McKenzie up, Ed Oliver up. We want to know your risers and fallers. What do you think of our risers and fallers? Who do you got and why? And then also any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, whatever you got, throw them up into the chat. We try to get to anything and everything in the live chat, and super chats always get priority because the color attracts us and we respect the monetary donation. So that will get a guaranteed pull up onto the show. And that's where we're at this point. Kendall, how do you feel? You ready to jump into quarterbacks, which I'm sure we're going to have a ton to talk about? Maybe not. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm good to start with quarterbacks. It'll be a quick one.
Sure. Josh Allen down. Terrible. Thoughts?
I think we should cut him. And, that way we can get rid of all the money on the books and
use it to
perhaps
sign a quarterback.
Exactly. We get it. We should be.
I tell you, in a serious fashion, though, in seeing, because I don't feel like there's not even a point to really talk about Josh Allen at this point, because we're not seeing anything conclusive or definitive that's going to turn us away from what we've seen from a sample size perspective of how he's performed in the regular season. But I shouldn't say pleasantly surprised, because I was excited when he came aboard. I've liked Case Keenum. I liked him in the scrimmage.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've liked him in camp. I like the calming presence again that he provides. And this ties into the wide receiver group. You've got a wide receiver group that everybody after Davis and Diggs is really trying to establish themselves. Isaiah McKenzie is separated a little bit. Crowder was hurt, but he's looked good. You've got Shakir, you've got Hodgins, you've got Gentry, you've got Pau from BYU. All these guys who have flashed in a variety of ways. And I think those lower tier guys are able to flash because they have a consistent presence at that backup QB position. So for me, Case Keenum is the biggest stock up guy in this quarterback room, because I'm discounting Josh Allen. I don't think his stock is up or down. He's Josh Allen. He's arguably the best quarterback in the league. He's one of the best players in the NFL. We know that. Matt Barkley, I consider more of Josh Allen's friend and like a practice squad guy, although he did have a really nice, he was the one who threw that back shoulder throw to Shakir for the touchdown.
Oh, that was him. Okay.
Very nice, very nice. But I've been happy with Case Keenum, and I think it's very important, one, just to have a guy who's good in the room from a mental standpoint in terms of helping you prepare weekly, helping to be another coach on the sideline in game while Dorsey's up top, and then you got Brady and Keenum and Barkley in your ear on the sideline. But then also, again, just we have so many players who are trying to establish themselves from a receiver perspective. It's nice having a stable option at QB2, throwing them the ball. Someone who, no disrespect to Mitchell Trubisky, his value wasn't in his arm. It was more in his dual threat potential and what he could do with his legs. In addition to the arm, with Keenum, you've got somebody who is on time. He knows, hey, that was a 5-step drop. You were supposed to be here. You weren't. Here's what you need to do. Someone who can really provide that stabilizing factor and help those receivers potentially showcase their ability and not be brought down by getting subpar potential from the guy throwing them the ball.
100% agree with everything you said. I think that is the staple. If you're talking about stock up, stock down for the quarterback position, yeah, I think it's tough to argue anything but just staying level on Josh Allen, especially without a game being played, and he probably won't even play against the Colts this week. So I think really other than, and you talked about this more than like 2-3 weeks ago, how important it's going to be for Case Keenum to have a strong preseason because of
it a lot.
You said it a lot, but like it's so true because it's also something we haven't really had for a long time in Buffalo because we're always struggling to even have a QB1. And it's tough to even evaluate the wide receivers at the top end of the depth chart. Now it's like, okay, we know what we have at the top end, but we also have the luxury now to have good backups, and it can help us evaluate that bottom end. And that bottom end obviously does start to contribute as the year goes on. We know injuries are a part of the game. We know we need to have depth at every position, not just quarterback, but this also affects, the tight ends, the running backs, the wide receivers. I got to say, it could be potentially huge for what James Cook can do this preseason, how much, they're just going to dump it down to him. Good little timing routes with him and Case Keenum. So yeah, I think that's the key takeaway to the quarterback group is that Case Keenum bit, how much he's going to elevate the play of those second tier offensive weapons and make it easier to evaluate them.
Yeah, great. Get everybody in the right space mentally from a play call standpoint, from a setup standpoint. And then when you're trying to evaluate those second and third tier guys, you want to eliminate as many variables as possible. He eliminates a lot of them.
You talk about it with young quarterbacks, isolate the variable, make it easy for him, make everything right around him, and it's easy to evaluate. It's the same kind of idea, but a little bit backwards.
Yeah, it's an inverse relationship in that regard when you juxtapose them together. And it's that it's more on the receiver to execute in their timing and in their route and read what's going on because you trust what Case Keenum is seeing, what he's calling, what he's reading, and allows you to isolate or potentially eliminate variables in your evaluation process, which is, again, very valuable. The better he plays, it's not just about the quarterback group, it's about the domino effect for the receivers and the other skill positions. So very, very nice to see from Case Keenum. Big time stock up for him. As we shift to the running backs a little bit, I think the top three all warrant. Actually, I'm going to talk about the kind of the fourth one first. Duke Johnson looked really good in the passing game in the scrimmage from a route running standpoint, timing, deception. I was very, happy to see him moving well as a, former U guy. It was nice to see him. Yeah, rocking the U always. He looked good. I don't think we're going to focus on him too much, but I mean, we'll probably see a decent amount of him come preseason game 1. And he looked good from a route running perspective. None of the running backs have had a great performance running the ball in camp, especially at the scrimmage, but Johnson looked good from a route running perspective in the scrimmage. But let's start top down from the perceived depth chart that we kind of have in our heads, but also that was not even potentially leaked, but that was released yesterday, I believe. So we've got RB1, which is Devin Singletary. Kendall, Singletary for you, stock up, stock down, no change. What do you got?
I'd say level. I'd say no change. I think he's even on course with what's to be expected. He's not making splash plays every single practice, but he's doing what's expected of him and sometimes more. He's not necessarily being not dependable. You're not seeing that side of things, but you're just seeing really level play. And that's what you want to see from someone like Devin Singletary. That's exactly what you expect from him. And when you get what you're expecting, that's dependability. And he's been available as well. And that's a huge part for running backs. Obviously, we know how the tires can just kind of wear off at a certain point. Being dependable at this position is absolutely huge, even with the depth that we have. And you already went all the way down to Duke Johnson. So I think for me, Devin Singletary has just been even level play.
And I feel like I feel like people think it's like a disrespectful thing to like label him as that. I agree. And no, it's not, especially when you have, I talked about it when I went deep into the running backs and the run game on Disguised Coverage last week. Like Devin Singletary, his you and I were talking about this in the DMs. his ability to break tackles and make people miss on a per carry basis is elite. He's like top 3 in the league amongst running backs. It's fantastic.
Wild.
So maybe that, I did not expect that. So maybe from that perspective, that's a plus matchup that he has.
Yeah.
But overall, he doesn't really have any plus matchups or plus traits, but he also doesn't really have anything that he's deficient at. He like,
Exactly.
if you're scale of 1 to 10, pretty much everything for running back, Devin Singletary is like at worst like a 6.5, or he's like a 7.5, which is good when you have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis and Dawson Knox and good offensive linemen at certain points. Like, you've got all these other plus matchups. Having someone who's dependable and reliable is a good thing. You can't have stars anywhere. You can't have studs everywhere. That doesn't happen. Having a good, reliable, steady performer at any position is a good thing, especially on a team where you've got a lot of plus matchups and plus players in a bunch of other positions like the Bills do. So yeah, I've been fine with Singletary. I don't think he showed anything that made me go, wow, this guy's transcending into a top 10 back in the league. And I also don't think he showed anything that was like, oh man, he's going to lose a ton of touches. I think it's been status quo, which is he's going to be the main ball carrier to start the year based on how he finished last year. I don't think he's shown anything to kind of wane or wean us off that track or that path. So same, I'm in that kind of even keel neutral plane. James Cook, I struggled on this one because for what he's valued as, that sub package back, I think his stock is up. We are seeing him, he's naturally translating and transitioning his game from college to the NFL. We are seeing him be able to understand leverage, be able to understand coverage. We're seeing him win against second teamers, third teamers, first teamers. He's getting work with the first team at the scrimmage. We saw Devin Singletary. It was funny. All 3 running backs got work with the first team a lot, and it was in the standard way. Like, Singletary got the majority of, touches or snaps, not touches, snaps. Cook came in on third downs. And then when the Bills got inside the 10, it was the Zach Moss show. And that's something very interesting for another time. We'll probably talk about post game, which is a fun little tidbit that I also haven't mentioned since everybody's here. Kendall and I will be doing a live post-game show on Disguise Coverage immediately following the Bills preseason game Saturday, so make sure you tune into that. But I digress. Don't want to tangent too much. I think from a receiving standpoint, Cook has been as advertised. I still want to see what he looks like as a runner, but I don't think we're going to see that until we get live action. The reason I'm not fully committing to a stock trending up for him, I posted one of the clips of him getting waxed by Terrell Bernard on a blitz in that scrimmage. I think there are fair questions for his pass protection that still remain right now. And it's just like what we talked about when we broke him down multiple times when the Bills drafted him. He makes the right read. He understands the protection. He understands who's coming, where to meet them. He just doesn't always win at the point of attack. And that's super unfortunate because he's doing everything right mentally. And I don't even think it's so much of a technique thing as it is a frame thing. He's just not, I just don't think he's built to be the nail and pick up a blitzing linebacker who's trying to be the hammer. That's the only reason I'm not fully committing to a stock up riser for James Cook. But I think in a lot of ways, he's been the plus matchup in the pass game that we have hoped for. You're seeing him get motioned out of the backfield and lining up in the slot. He's lining up out wide. He's running routes out of the backfield. He's open in the flats, and he's taking advantage of that no cover zone area and that space that the defense is either willingly or accidentally giving up. You're seeing him take advantage of that space and win against NFL talent in very similar ways to how we won at Georgia. So his receiving ability is real. It's translating very well. We still need to see what he looks like as a runner. And I think there's fair questions still about his pass protection. Like we've talked about multiple times, if he can't holistically not be deficient as a pass protector, it starts to limit what you can do with him overall, because it starts to become a tendency giveaway and a potential weakness or vulnerability. So that's the only reason I'm not fully, trending upwards. But I think there's a lot to like with him, and I'm very excited to see him on Saturday. He's one that I am watching for big time.
Oh, yeah, big time. Hopefully he gets enough to actually evaluate him in that game, specifically in the run game, like you were saying. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I have him right on that cusp of just like really even level with my expectations from, the draft process to just close to breaking that cusp into stock up. He's close because in my eyes, everything I evaluated for his draft profile, I feel like he has completely fit that bill so far in training camp.
Fair.
Like
Yep.
there hasn't been anything where it's like, oh, he's worse than what I thought. He's really exactly where I thought he was. And it's really great to hear that he's translating, like you said, in the pass game. Like
Yeah.
that is huge. And that's the main thing pulling me to say his stock is up, but not necessarily in a vacuum because of who he is as a player. But if you extrapolate it out to how that affects the Bills offense, that like ultimately shoots the Bills offense
Yeah.
stock up because he adds that element and obviously the speed as well. So when you isolate it into a vacuum, just James Cook, is he as a player, is he better than what was advertised? I don't think so. I think he's on track and he shows a lot of promise. So I think that is encouraging. But yes, like Ant said, things to watch for the game with James Cook, how he's running in zone versus gap schemes in that game, if he's even getting a chance in either or just one, and then the pass blocking. You want to see him execute those three phases. Can he do all three? Is he limited to just one type of run scheme? Can he sufficiently hold down a linebacker blitzing? Those kind of things. If we can see him check those boxes even against twos or threes, it's a big step and it'll be encouraging.
I think that's spot on and very accurate. We've got 2 Zach Moss related questions, which I'm going to pull up after we speak on Zach Moss. Kendall, I'll let you go first because he is your prince.
He is the prince that was promised from Utah. I reside in his homelands. Well, college lands. You can't tell, of course.
No, right? Everybody should be able to tell the angle of the light plus your background.
Right? Like you can't tell from the sunset angle here. Like
people don't know geography. People don't read books anymore. That's the
see
problem.
The shadows from the mountains right there.
People don't get. I can tell you're right by the front of the mountains. Yeah, easy to see. What do you think about your boy Zach Moss? Stock up, stock down, status quo? Because you're here, and actually, you know what? I'll pull in one of these comments, and then we'll get to Michael's in a minute. Because John's comment here, and Kendall, this is something that we've talked about. You pulled this quote several episodes or months ago, saying, John says, keep in mind that Zach Moss was hurt all last year. Bean mentioned his left ? Foot injury really impacted him. We heard Brandon Bean say that Moss was recovering from that ankle injury that he suffered against the Colts in the wild card round the season before. And he didn't really heal in the way they wanted him to, or he wanted to. And he, by like early in the year, he couldn't really cut off one entire side of his body. Like he couldn't plant and execute. Bean was very particular with that. So keeping that in mind, I think shines a light on his performance last year. As we come into this year, what do you think for him right now? Stock up, stock down, regular, prince, no crown?
And no crown at all. No, so for me, I'd say personally, I think he's even. I think he's on track with my expectations. I've heard that he's been having good camps. He's looked sharp. He's been with the ones mixed in as like the 1B kind of character.
Some burst.
Exactly. He's showing bursts. He's showing that he can cut off that foot. He's showing in and out of his breaks that he can be quick. We know he doesn't have the long speed, but if he has that burst and short area quickness, in a phone booth, all of that stuff, that's what you want to see from Zach Moss because that's his game. That and then obviously adding the power element. And obviously he's still been holding up on little dump offs from Josh Allen. I keep reading that he's just getting open for Josh Allen. We've talked about that so many times, how QB friendly
people
he is.
Don't know about
they don't see it.
He's so good.
He's deceptively QB friendly.
He's supposed to be in the block and then no one comes and he's like, okay, I'm just going to release out. And he's always open. He gets himself open. He finds the space and coverage. He's good at leveraging space
out
every time.
He's
people should know that because he's had several receiving touchdowns because of that. He just slips out and then makes a play, makes a guy miss and scores. Continue. I'm sorry, I feel strongly about this.
So no, you're good. I mean, it's we've been getting heated about it all off season because this is where I was going. For me personally, I think his stock is even because he's on par with my expectations. However, for Bills Mafia, I think his stock is up. I think most of Bills Mafia wrote him off and they were like, all right, this dude's probably getting cut because we drafted
They set
James
the bar
Cook.
so low.
Exactly. And because of that, you see the reports coming from camp. Oh, stock is way up. Zach Moss could take the role from Singletary. And it's like, no, we got to find the middle. We got to pump the brakes and find the middle in between that and calibrate a little bit. So I think he's on par with, what we saw from him in that promising rookie year. He's still ascending off of that, with the peaks and valleys from the injuries and all.
Yep.
So I think this is really this preseason and ideally that second game, we'll be able to see a lot from him. and how sharp he really is and how healthy he really is, because his skill set is holistic. It's very Singletary like, where there's a lot of good and average skills in his skill set. He doesn't necessarily show a full on, I guess, long speed, full on
Mhm.
weakness. But outside of that, like, he's just a very well rounded running back. And I think he's on par to have a good preseason.
I'm gonna pull up this comment. You saw what I tweeted at you earlier with the Tesla stuff?
Yeah, it
This
was
is fantastic with
fantastic.
Steven saying starting on late lads actually stopped by the Tesla website to see if Kendall was mentioned.
She
Glad
just
to see
showed
he's
up in
okay.
like
Was it?
cast, like
That was
mummified.
fantastic. I saw that and I don't know. My brain immediately went, this is gonna be a Kendall tweet. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I love this comment here from Michael saying that Moss's ability to find space for dump downs might be the biggest underrated ability in the
Yes.
entire running
Yes.
back room. I think I agree from an underrated standpoint. I think people see Zach Moss as either like a thumper, hammer running back,
Mhm.
or bowling ball kind of guy, and that's it. People don't recognize that, again, his ability to find space and leverage space and get open, it's consistent. He's done it in the regular season, 4 touchdowns, especially in the
Yeah.
red zone. It's very valuable. And I think with Zach Moss, we've gotten to the point where I think he's up there with like how he polarizes, how
Mhm.
polarizing he is. I think you've got a lot of people that are like, oh no, he just needs a chance. And other people that have, to your point you mentioned earlier, have completely written him off.
Mhm.
And this is where I wanted to bring this comment from Michael. So, I mentioned Zach Moss got a lot of that red zone work, and I posted something about Zach Moss, and a couple of people responded and were just like, oh, well, he got stuffed on every single goal line carry. Like, he's not good. He's not ready, this and that. And Michael's question here is, was Moss getting stuffed because of him or the makeshift first team O line? I just think it's funny how people, when they don't like someone, they find a way to like holistically blame them
Yeah.
for everything. So it was like,
Mhm.
yeah, he was getting stuffed at the goal line. And I was like, well, what about the offensive line? Like,
Right.
and it was like, no, it's him. And I was like, that's a bold take to blame the running back solely for everything that happened on a
Yeah.
run.
Not an
And
independent position.
no, not at all. And Michael, to answer your question, I think as it always is, I think it's partially on the running back, partially on the
Yes.
offensive line. But I will say on those goal line carries, there was crazy penetration from the defense. The offense, first team, second team, third team as a whole in the scrimmage did not run the ball well. And we're going to talk about it when it gets to the O line. We're at a certain point where I hope the defensive line is amazing because they're
Yep.
winning so much that it's either they're amazing or the offensive line is terrible and can't execute at certain in certain platitudes and certain functions. But I think the stuffing at the goal line, I'm not going to completely make Moss blameless, but there was a lot of penetration. I'm talking like before he even gets the ball from Allen, as the ball's getting put into
Yeah,
his
there's
gut,
already
there's
someone
already
in the backfield.
penetration a yard or two into the backfield. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do anything in short yardage situations when you're in that spot. But
Mhm.
Moss, for me, I'm in a similar boat. I would trend towards stock up, but this is what I expected from him. I said it, I
Right.
tweeted it during the scrimmage, not to write him off. I think he could be trade bait for a team, or
Sure. Yeah.
I keep mentioning it, like Ken Dorsey just seems so matchup focused and he wants
Mm.
to turn up dials and turn down dials from play to play, drive to drive, series to series, game to game. And because Moss and Cook and Singletary all give you a little something different, I think it's realistic to think that all three make this team. I don't know if all three are going to dress on a week to week basis, but I think you could see weeks where maybe Cook sits or Moss sits. I think Singletary is probably the safest, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Zach Moss gets some meaningful snaps. Or again, the very first series I thought was very interesting. Singletary is getting the ball between the 20s and Cook is coming in on second and long and third downs. And then when they get into the 10s, it's Moss.
Yeah.
Again, we've talked about so much. Tywan Jones is like running back 3 from a roster standpoint, but he plays special teams. The Bills don't dress more than 2 running backs traditionally, yada, yada. Maybe it's different under Ken Dorsey. Maybe he wants to use all 3. Again, it gives you a nice little matchup piece and a rock, paper, scissors component in game, not even just opponent to opponent, week to week. It gives you that rock, paper, scissors ability, drive to drive, series to series, quarter to quarter, however you choose to, break it down. But I think he looks healthy. You've seen more
Yes.
burst. He had a couple receptions where he really got to show that he got into the open field and kind of just took off from him. He's not somebody who's going to be, 60 yards on a cloud of dust, but he showed some burst. He looks healthy. I think he's still got some pop left in him. And now that he's healthy, we'll see what he can be. I have a stock up for him as well. I think this running back group, while it doesn't have any one dominant, strong RB1 that's going to knock your socks off, all of them at this point have a nice plus matchup or trait. Or again, if you use them sparingly and not interchangeably, but if you use them in rotation, all of them, complement one another. And if you merged all of them into one player, they'd be the best running back in the world, right? Because they have everything. But I think his stock is up as well. And I think it's either he gets traded or he gets used. And someone might be like, well, of course, but no, I don't think he sits a ton.
Well, he was a healthy scratch a lot. So I don't think that's in the cards for this season, obviously barring injury and all that stuff.
Dorsey is going to be very, very interesting. And I see the comment here by chance saying no team is going to trade for Moss. He legitimately has no value. Look at the
running back on a rookie deal.
Running back on a rookie deal for a team who needs a back, and they'll give up a fifth, or probably not a fifth, maybe like a sixth or a seventh. We saw Brandon Beane get value for Daryl Johnson just because he was good at special teams. You see, and there's tons of other moves that Beane has made as well. I'll never say I don't want to deal in an absolute like that, but yeah, a running back who's shown some ability, who's a year removed from a pretty good rookie season, who is better than people realize he is. You never know. Ooh. Dobbs with a nice comment here. Moss has better catching skills than Singletary, but Singletary has closed the gap. I agree. And I also say this, Zach Moss is the best pass protector out of all three running backs.
Yes.
And easy. I think that's, hands down. I think that's easy as well. Let's go to the wide receivers here. Big position group. Let's start overall. Let's start with your stock up guys. How many do you have? Who's really stood out to you? Because, it's a big position grouping. We've got several from top to bottom. But if you had to really focus on two guys who have really caught your eye, whose stock is up the most for the wide receiver group?
I mean, the two guys that absolutely caught my eye the most is Isaiah McKenzie and Khalil Shakir. I think I have three, and the third one is Hodgins, but I think the significance that you're hearing the reports and you're seeing videos and all the plays that Shakir and McKenzie are making, they're far and away the highest stock risers in this group. Even with the great things we've heard and even seen a little bit of Gabe Davis, you kind of expected that more. So it's not necessarily a stock rising. He's just still trending upwards at the same time.
If Gabriel Davis was doing this last year, I think everyone would be like, oh my God. But we come into it thinking he's expected to be wide receiver too.
Stock is almost all about expectation here. And when you're talking about guys like McKenzie and Shakir, obviously we were high on Shakir even through the draft process, but I think, I don't want to speak for you, but he's exceeded my expectations so far. I mean, we knew the route running, we knew the burst, we knew the deceptiveness. We understood how he understood the game. We could see that he was NFL ready to an extent. He wasn't going to be shocked by the speed of the game, or
but there's still a learning curve
of the game.
And we've talked about passing it. Yes, he looks like in person. I've seen him twice now. He looks like Boise State college tape Khalil Shakir.
Right. He doesn't look like he's overwhelmed. And that's massive for a rookie wide receiver. Absolutely massive. And it's kind of the stuff we saw from Gabe Davis. We saw that obviously there were moments that were too big for him. I mean, every rookie is going to have struggles, and we're going to see struggles from Khalil Shakir. But you could see that there was a level of comfort and ease to things that aren't necessarily easy. So that's just very, very encouraging. Anytime you can see someone doing hard things and make it look easy, that's when it should catch your eye.
Especially as a rookie.
Yeah, exactly. So he's definitely he's 1A, 1B. I mean, we talked about McKenzie. Anyone that hasn't heard us talking about McKenzie, definitely check out our interview 2 weeks ago with Isaiah McKenzie on the Film Room. After this episode, of course, he was fantastic. You really learn a lot of nuggets about what he's been working on this offseason, and then kind of comparing that to all the reports you've heard, the story just matches up. He's having an excellent camp, and I mean, what else could you ask for from the guy?
No, he's been absolutely crushing it. One question I wanted to bring, Eric asked this question. He says, can you guys speak to Shakir's blocking ability? The comparison to Robert Woods gets my heart fluttering.
I like that second half. That's
Yeah,
good.
it does. I feel like there's two camps.
Mm.
There's a camp that says he doesn't block, and then there's a camp that thinks he blocks like Robert
Like
Woods.
Robert Woods,
I
right?
think that's a very high praise at this point. I
Mhm.
will say he's got some blocks on tape in college that are exciting and encouraging. And then he's got some other ones where you're like, what was he doing on this one? Like,
Mhm.
what was his like? What was going on in his head on this one?
Mhm.
I will say thus far, and I'll speak for myself here and then pass it to you. In what I've seen in person, and I've tweeted out multiple tweets about this, the thing that has me most encouraged about his blocking ability is being used in that Cooper Cup type of role as
Yep.
that blocker coming in on the inside. So for people who don't know, but you get a lot of those condensed formations
Mhm.
from the Rams where you've got Cup or Robert Woods or Van Jefferson or even Odell. Well, less Odell, but they're lined up tight, almost like in the box type of thing. You got your five linemen, you've got your
Mhm.
tight end, and your receivers are all right there, almost like all inside the hash. And they do that to get to a variety of things, but if we're just talking about it from a blocking standpoint, they will use Cup and they'll use Woods as primary blockers, not just against secondary players, against linebackers, against
Mhm.
edges, against safeties. And that's something that was partially instilled in Cooper Cup when Aaron Cromer was there
Mhm.
early in Cup's career with the Rams. So I think it makes sense that you're seeing some of these looks now. And we're seeing that from Shakir. I saw it on day one of training camp. I saw it in the scrimmage. He's lined up outside or he's lined up in the slot and he comes in and he motions and he's almost hipped off the tight end or almost in like a wingback
Mm.
position. And so imagine he's here and the tight end is just inside him and the tight end pops out that defensive end and Shakir just steps inside of him and he leads the running back up through the hole and takes
Mhm.
on a linebacker or the nickel defender or the safety and digs him out and he's winning. And I think more importantly than the winning, he's giving the effort with it. Blocking to me, there's technique involved, but a
Mhm.
lot of blocking is like defense in the NBA. So much of it is just effort. If you want to play
Yes.
defense in the NBA, you can play good enough defense. If you want to be a good blocker and you want to pop people and hit people, you can be a good blocker. There is 1000% technique involved and leverage and understanding where to hit and how and the timing. But a lot of it is effort and
Mhm.
willingness. And he's shown that very early on.
Mhm.
And that ties into why he's one of my big risers here thus far and someone to watch for as we go into this preseason game for so many of the reasons you mentioned, Kendall. Like we fawned over him when looking at his tape and his ability to separate at multiple points in the stem or in the break, his release package, both inside
Mhm.
and outside, and his ability to work in the boundary and function in one-on-one coverage, his ability to run seemingly almost any route, whether he's
Yeah,
winning
really.
vertical, whether, and he's winning vertically, not necessarily because he's the fastest, but because he's got burst and then he knows how to create illusion and deceptiveness in his route and then take advantage and get vertical. He can win in the intermediate. There's almost like nothing he couldn't run from a college perspective from like a route tree standpoint. And then
Mhm.
you come into the NFL and he's doing those things again, which is fantastic, but also being used as again like that little chess piece action and being used as a lead blocker in scenarios has really opened my eyes for him. It's one of the
Mhm.
main things for me. So I thought this comment from Eric was tremendous because I think his blocking ability has been turned up a
Yeah.
bit with the Bills so far, and you're seeing him being used in that type of Cooper Cup role
Mhm.
where I mean, Cup has just made such a like tremendous difference for that offense because of that versatility and getting that from a slot receiver that traditionally, if you were the Bills, like you're not getting that from Diggs, you weren't getting that from Beasley, you weren't getting that from Sanders. You would
Right.
have to have gotten it from Gabriel Davis, which they did. But now you can have a slot receiver who's a genuine threat in the passing game, but also can motion inside and lead your running back through the hole as the lead blocker on an inside zone or on a gap run, like whatever you want to do. And that's a big thing. And I second all of your other stock ups. Isaiah McKenzie, sitting down with him in the film room and talking to him, I was blown away by how smart he
Tremendous.
was. It was tremendous. And talking about how much he worked on his game this offseason and how much he studied Cole Beasley and the Devontae
Mhm.
Adamses of the world to be able to add that route nuance and intricacy into his bag so that he could become more complete. You're seeing that in camp. We're not seeing him just win with speed and burst on overs and crossers and drags. We're seeing screens. We're seeing him win with precision. We're seeing him win with body language and knowing how to
Mhm.
sell one look and then put your foot in the ground and execute something else. So we're seeing complete receiver traits from Isaiah
Mhm.
McKenzie. So yeah, I'm in full alignment here, 1A and 1B. And then yeah, Isaiah Hodgins, I really liked him. The scrimmage really hit home for me. He was dead tired during
Mm.
towards the end of the scrimmage, and they're running kind of like a 2-minute type drill with the second team, and he's gassed. And he just kept getting the ball on these outs and these hitches and getting outside and getting outside. And Stephon Diggs was hyping him up like crazy, like just getting after him. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it was to motivate him because he could see that he was gassed, but you could see like he
Yeah.
was coming up, hands on hips,
Yeah.
real labored breathing, and then come out in his route. He was just getting the ball nonstop. He
Mm.
pulled off a lot of good catches in drills and camp early on when I was there. And I'm excited to see. He's one of those guys who, when Case Keenum came on, I was like, cool, we can find out what Isaiah
Right.
Hodgins is going to be. And I think he's answered the call so far. And I think there's a lot to like in those receivers. Tanner Gentry has looked really good.
Mhm.
Pau has looked really good. Kumaro's looked good in spurts, but I think he's more special teams than he is
Right.
receiver. So I don't want to talk about him in that bucket. But very interesting group, I think, with 3 key standouts. Gabriel Davis is up there as well. He's looked very good,
Right.
but I think, like we mentioned again, we have a certain expectation level. So him doing what he's done isn't necessarily like, wow, his stock is trending up. He's kind of playing to the expectation and bar that he has
100%.
set and that we've set for him. Let's move on to the tight ends a little bit. And with the tight ends, if you want to add anything on Knox or Howard, feel free. I'm going to
Mm.
include Reggie Gilliam here because I think he's more H-back than he is fullback. So
That's where
Gilliam,
I put him too.
beautiful. So Gilliam and any other tight end. Let's start with the non-Reggie Gilliam people. Any news or notes up or down for any of these guys from you?
I gotta be honest, I'm really just split even on the tight end group. I think it's been just what you've kind of expected, and I think that really starts and stops with OJ Howard. I think you've seen a lot of days with OJ Howard where it seems like he's just a forgotten guy, and you're getting no news about him, and you start to think, wow, is he really just this chess piece to get a second tight end on the field? Or is he actually going to contribute? You kind of start to ask that question. Was he just brought in to be that chess piece? But I do think he has had some good days. So ultimately, with the top end of Knox and Howard, I think they're kind of just doing what you'd expect, especially from Howard being sure a really high ceiling guy coming out of college, but then just underwhelmed with injuries and being backloaded on a depth chart in Tampa. Like he's just had a tough
Yeah.
go of it. But at this point in his career, you're not necessarily expecting him to live up to that Bama draft stock. You know, he's kind of past that point. So, in terms of expectations, I think he's on track for what his expectations were, maybe slightly below even, but either way, I'd put it at even, and he's still learning
Hmm.
this offense. He's got time to really acclimate himself into this offense and feel comfortable. I'm most excited, obviously, for the wrinkle of what he could add in 12 personnel, 22, whatever the Bills want to do in that regard. I think that's the most exciting thing for him. But like I said, with James Cook, when you isolate it to the player level and put that in a vacuum, I think his performance to this point has been even. And I think you could say the same thing for Knox. I mean, really because of his expectations. Obviously,
Exactly.
Knox's expectations are much higher than Howard's. So anything that's bad is going to push him back to even. So that's a good one from Jason.
This got me laughing. I hope the tree is the 53rd roster spot. I wish the tree. I think the tree is going to hang it up. The tree's retired. It's older than you think it is. It's got a lot of mileage on the tires. Just kidding. No, the tree's in its prime. The tree's going to the XFL. What do you think of? We've talked about. I echo all your thoughts, and I don't want to regurgitate anything or waste
Yeah, no,
time.
you're good.
So I'm right there with you. What do you think about? Because I have thoughts on Reggie Gilliam. I like him a lot. But what do you think of the idea? We've talked so much this offseason about the Bills' ability to dictate to defenses and how 12 personnel allows you to do that because of what defenses want to do with 2 high coverages and light boxes and lighter personnel, and what 2 tight end sets allow you to get to in the pass protection game and the run game and so on and so forth, and what it opens up. It allows you to dictate, allows you to remain multiple, and we're a big fan of multiplicity here on the show.
Sure are.
What do you think of? Are you starting to sway it all from, because we were excited with the OJ Howard move for the 12 personnel opportunity. Are you swaying it all and thinking maybe the 12 personnel opportunity is not Howard and Knox, but it's Reggie Gilliam and Dawson Knox. And maybe the heavier personnel looks aren't necessarily, again, it all depends on how you classify Reggie Gilliam. I think
Right.
he's
Is
an
it
H-back.
21 or 12?
Exactly. So we'll just say heavier personnel.
Yeah.
Instead of the heavier personnel packages being Howard and Knox, is it Gilliam and Knox? How are you starting to sway it all and thinking like you want to see more reps and snaps from Gilliam than Howard? Like, where's your brain with that?
I think
It's a big
I'm leaning
question.
in that direction. It is a tough question. I think I'm leaning towards Gilliam right now, but this is all based on, propaganda. Everything I've heard that's been being fed to me at this point during the training camp stage.
Fair.
I need to see some film. I need to see, obviously, I've seen film on Gilliam. I know what I'm getting from Gilliam, and I've seen some stuff from Howard on other teams, but I want to see what Howard looks like in this Buffalo Bills offense. I think there is this slight edge to Gilliam right now because obviously he knows the offense. He's performed in this offense and he knows what they want from him, and he knows what they want from him in multiple spots. So I think he's just got that slight edge because of familiarity. And then I'm excited about Howard, but I can't turn that corner. I am leaning towards Gilliam at this point just because of the way the team has treated him. Giving him an extension this past week clearly means that they value him. They value the chess piece that he is and what he can do to potentially unlock this offense with extra multiplicity. It's the same spiel for OJ Howard. It's the same exact spiel, but who's going to perform better? And that's just the bottom line, because they're both going to do the same thing. If they're on the field, they're going to force the defense to match personnel with a third linebacker. So it's going to come down to who plays better. And that's ultimately where my eyes are going to be against the Colts, against the next opponent in preseason and the next opponent in preseason. It's going to come down to evaluating which one is the better matchup dictation. Is it Gilliam or is it Howard?
I'm very big on Reggie Gilliam right now, and I really have been all off season. I tweeted it out this week. There's an article from Albert Breer in the end of December. Actually, I think it came out the day after the Monday night game between the Patriots and the Bills.
Okay.
And it talked about how the Patriots beat the Bills, only passing it 3 times. But it also talked about how he spoke with Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle Shanahan spoke about how he uses Kyle Juszczyk and why he's so valuable. And I'm not saying Reggie Gilliam is Kyle Juszczyk, but basically Shanahan talked about how teams don't use 3 linebackers anymore because there's not like a fullback on the field anymore. And Juszczyk allows, because of what he can do in the pass game and in the run game, he allows them so much versatility when they go 21 personnel. And now you've got defenses who are put in this bind because they're having to deal with 21 personnel with either lighter personnel on defense, or they're having to bring in a third linebacker and have more of a traditional base defense. And that third linebacker isn't their base package anymore because nickel is their base. Now you've got somebody on the field who isn't practicing with those ones as much. The menu is more limited on the defensive side of the ball. And then with Juszczyk, you can leave him in as your one running back. You can have him hipped off in a wing back, look, or have him lined up in the slot. You can get him vertical. You can do so many things with him. And I know Gilliam is not that, but Gilliam talked about how he models his game after Kyle Juszczyk. And I think that fullback piece is that movement type F role in an offense, that H-back piece, it just allows you so much versatility. I think and ironically, it's another Niners team. So I think of the Niners with Juszczyk and Kittle. I also think back to those Jim Harbaugh Niners with Delaney Walker and Vernon Davis.
Yeah.
And what Delaney Walker, like, he could come and he could trap, he could lead Frank Gore through the hole, or he could get out in the route. I don't think Gilliam's the polished route runner that Delaney Walker is.
No.
But we saw what he afforded the Buffalo Bills down the stretch. He allowed the Buffalo Bills to play power football down the stretch. They're running counters. They're running power. They're running gap scheme, running the ball down teams' throats over and over again. That's an awesome comment there. Gilliam is a poster child for the Bills culture. Just grinds, does his job, and he affords you some chess piece, versatility, multiplicity on that offense. I have my eyes big time on Reggie Gilliam. I thought he was flashing in training camp early on when I went, and then watching the film down the stretch, there was just so much to like because, again, he gave the Bills like a power run game identity or a gap scheme identity. Again, like, you're watching him, that touchdown from Singletary in the wild card round against the Patriots. You watch him just scrape across. They run a guard fullback pull, and Bates comes and kicks out the end. and Gilliam leads it up to the hole and just pops his linebacker, turns his hips, seals it, and Singletary gets through clean. If Reggie Gilliam was getting a lot of work after practices in a pass catching role. Like I was watching him stay and get extra reps on the jugs, running extra routes coming out of the backfield with Barkley and with Keenum, just doing anything he can to get more comfortable in that role and in that skill set. And so I'm still very much on the heavier personnel train in whatever form or fashion it comes in. But I have my eyes big time locked onto Reggie Gilliam. What does his usage look like? Are we seeing him in the backfield? Are we seeing him more in a tight end role? Is he more of an H-back role? Where does he align? How is he used? How does that function with the run game? And how does it function with the pass game as a whole? I think I asked you that question because I think he's overtaken it for me a little bit. Like I still want to see Howard and how he functions.
Yeah, same.
That ceiling is still there, albeit I think the odds of hitting it for Howard are significantly less than it was, big time, than when he came out of Bama. But Gilliam, man, has really, really kind of turned the corner a little bit, and he's overtaken. I shouldn't say he's turned the corner, but my thinking of what I want from heavier personnel groupings has changed because
that makes sense,
I think I flipped him with Howard, and now I want to see more Gilliam and Knox because if you can function in some of people, not Jimmy G all the time. And I know there's some people that hate on Kyle Shanahan, but the versatility that the 49ers have on offense, they were 5th in passing DVOA last year and 4th in rushing DVOA. And if Jaquiski Tartt pulls off that interception against Matthew Stafford, the Niners are going to the Super Bowl again under Kyle Shanahan.
Because they're hard to defend.
They are hard to defend because they're multiple and they can get just so many things because of the personnel groupings they use. And Kyle Juszczyk is a huge part. Granted, Kyle Juszczyk is a unicorn. Not saying Gilliam is that, but if you have Juszczyk light and you don't have to rely on that holistically, it's a fun chess piece and a fun move towards.
And that was the idea with Patrick DeMarco all those years ago, and obviously Gilliam is the replacement of Patrick.
And if you
DeMarco,
remember,
so it's still that idea.
And also think about it. You know who the Bills tried to sign before they got Patrick DeMarco? Kyle Juszczyk, who was a free agent from the Ravens. And
this has always been money. This has clearly always been part of the plan. Get more multiple. It's clearly just been a long con.
It has been a long con. Very interesting. I like this question here. I saw that it's for me. Kendall, you can answer too. DF Forever says, pro Ant question. Where would you rank our wide receiver tight end weapons compared to the rest of the league? Oh, wow.
I mean, it's safe to say top 10, but it's just like where in the top 10?
Yeah, I think, I don't want.
That requires a lot of thought.
If you have me on, at me on Twitter under that exact same handle, at pro__ant, DM me, message me. If not, I will answer this question in the next film room. I know this is like stupid to be like, I'll answer it next time. I want to give this real thought because I don't want to just be like, my answer is top 10, but I really want to be like 7,
the actual
8,
position.
4. Yeah, I want to actually drill down because I think that's a tremendous question. So
I agree.
Tune into the film room next week. I'm going to look this up. Kendall, remind me of this. You know I forget everything all the time.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, this is a good question. I'm going to definitely answer this. Well played. I like that. Sophia comes through and says, smash the like. Thanks for the awesome content with a smiley face. Thank you very much for being here and for the super chat and the kind words as well. Yeah, I appreciate you. That's a really good question. Where do they, I like to give I don't like to just throw things against the wall and hope that they stick. Yeah, I'm not just trying to be like, I want to give a real answer.
6 best, of course.
That's a really good. Oh, and he said I really was hoping you would look into this one. I 1,000% will. Very good question. Let's shift gears. And Michael says, my only issue with Gilliam is he's an H-back, not a true fullback. A true fullback is just an O-lineman that can run. That is not true, Michael. Stop trying to.
More than that.
No, he's trying to. Because he's such a trenches guy. He's trying to give any boon that he can to offensive line or defensive line. Don't try to claim fullback in the offensive line grouping. How dare you? DF Forever says, Ant, not specific. Top 5 or top 10? I would say closer to 10 than 5. But in the top 10.
Yeah.
I think.
Definitely top 10.
I really have to go down the rabbit hole. I would say closer to 10. Right now, my gut tells me like 7, 8.
That's what my gut's saying too, but I know I'd want to like look it through. And
I'm going to say between 5 and 10, but closer to 10 than 5. Oh man, that has my wheels. I want to stop everything and just start
pull up depth charts.
I know, right? But I like it. Because I have an idea of who I want. pulled us horribly off track. But I like it. Well done. Well played. Ooh, get us thinking here. I like that. That's also awesome that we have people who join us live in general, but that also give us really good questions and content. That's fantastic. Okay. Offensive line. Anything takes positive. I have a very simple take of I just want to see what this line looks like when healthier. I want to see Saffold and Brown. I'm holding off all reservation until we see them in live action Saturday and going forward. I want to see what the first team looks like more in camp. We haven't seen a lot of Saffold and Brown because of injuries to both of them. I'm okay with where the line is, but I'm still very much in the same place that I have been all off season. I'm not holistically confident in them.
Yeah.
From top to bottom, I think there's a lot of depth. I don't know how much quality depth is there. Yeah. And, I don't know how sustainable it is to rely on Josh to be a magician and evading pressure and sacks like he was last year. Like Josh is good at it, but I don't want to keep forcing him to have to be that good at it. So I think overall, the offensive line, just because of how much they've gotten waxed by the defensive line in camp so far, for me is trending overall as a group a little down, but I'm not in panic mode. I'm not worrying. I want to see what they look like. One, with Saffold and Brown in there. Two, I want to see what all the offensive linemen look like against another team in live action on the preseason.
I really don't have anyone trending upwards other than Questenberry, just because he's stepped up admirably in an injury to Brown. I think other than that, there's really not much like overwhelmingly positive to speak about because the defensive line keeps winning. And you alluded to it. I mean, that's really going to be my big thing. I know we're talking offensive line, but there's really not a lot to take away because there hasn't been continuity. There hasn't been health. And it's hard to be consistently good when you have those two things working against you. So I know this works towards defensive line, but my biggest takeaway is like about the offensive line. I want to see how good the defensive line plays against the Colts to see if they're just winning because the O-line is bad or if they're winning because they're just better than our O-line. And it's really tough to evaluate when it's just mix and match going on in the offensive line. So I agree with you. I want to see some continuity. I'd like to see them get healthier and like to see them get good by the second preseason game because we need to find some continuity there. We've been big on improving the offensive line this offseason, and obviously there were improvements, but they weren't the improvements that we probably would have made. So this continues to be the area that lacks confidence for the two of us.
I agree. Funny comment here from DF Forever again. He says, "This is where I ask, where do you grade our offensive line compared to the rest of the league?" With a huge laugh out loud. He knows what he's doing. I can more confidently say I think this Bills offensive line, when healthy, is anywhere from like 10 to like 17 or 18 on a given week. I think they are, and I don't mean this negatively, I think they are an overall holistically like average offensive line with some plus traits. Like Roger Saffold's a good example. I think he's a plus matchup in the run game. At best, he's sufficient in pass protection. And then you've got guys like Mitch Morse, who I think is one of the best movement centers in football, but he will struggle against, bigger, heavier type guys who want to bull rush and drive. There are ups, ebbs and flows to everybody. Well, when you put all the pieces together, Spencer Brown is also a huge wild card. If Spencer Brown is consistent, this is a top 10 offensive line because of what he offers you, but he's a huge wild card as well. But I think, on their best day, if everything clicks, they're somewhere around top 10. If everything falls apart with this group now, they're like bottom 20, but I think median range, they're anywhere from like 12 to 16, 17, again, I think that's fine. Like, you're not going to be amazing everywhere. I would love for the Bills to have an amazing offensive line. This offensive line can get the job done, hopefully, in a variety of ways. So, question here. The Kelly era offensive line was considered good. No, the Jim Kelly offensive line was fantastic. Yes, they were very good. Very good. And Michael has the comment here. Don't care how good Allen is versus pressure. I still want him to face as little of it as possible. Because you also want to think too, right? Like, if teams can get pressure on Josh Allen with 4, that means they can drop 7 into coverage. You don't want that. You want teams to send 4 and get absolutely no pressure so Josh can just sit and do what he wants. Or the opposite teams are like, we got to send 5. We got to send 6. then you've got one less coverage man, and you've got more of a potential advantage coming out in the route distribution.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games that can be played when you try to force the defense's hand. Let's stay in the trenches. Let's shift. And again, just to wrap that little piece for people, big time eyes on the offensive line. All of them.
Yeah. Like every
Saturday.
quarter of the game, like the depth is in question. All of it needs
All
to be
of them.
evaluated.
I don't know how much we're going to see from the starters.
Right.
Or the guys who have just returned, like Saffold and Brown. But what does Tommy Doyle look like? What does Cody Ford look like still? What does Manx look like? Botker's not playing. All the younger guys like Tenuta and just all the way down. Like, who are they? Quessenberry, how does he function? He's been getting work at guard and at right tackle with Spencer Brown being out, and when Bates was out. All these mix and match pieces.
I wonder if we'll see Doyle at guard.
Maybe we will. I wouldn't be surprised if we did, given Cromer's track record and what he likes to be. I could see that happening. Let's switch it. Let's stay in the trenches, which will bring Michael joy because he loves trench warfare with the offensive line and defensive line. Let's go to the defensive line. Let's talk about holistically as a group. We're including defensive tackles and edge. So defensive line across the board. Any risers, any fallers? Who do you got for your stock up, stock down here in this group of anybody who stands out really to you?
So the most obvious ones for me are Groot and Ed Oliver. I think we just keep hearing reports of Ed Oliver like almost they have to take him off the field because the offense can't run plays because he's just too disruptive. I mean, you love to hear it, you hate to hear it in terms of his development and of course the offense just getting moving and getting some continuity going. So you love to hear it, you hate to hear it. But I mean, Ed Oliver being a menace, penetrating offensive lines and just getting in the backfield, that's his MO. That's what you want to hear. And it's really great to hear that he's picking up right where he left off. He's probably my biggest riser on the interior of the defensive line. Tim Settle has had some good days from what I've heard, but I mean, just hearing great reports about Ed Oliver is awesome. But then secondly, Groot. Greg Rousseau has been really putting together a pass rush repertoire. Whether that has to do with Von Miller's arrival or not, or just his own work ethic, whatever it is, I don't care because he has a pass rush repertoire now and he has a plan. He has a plan when he's attacking the quarterback, and that is a massive step in his development because we know the length, we know the strength, we know the athleticism. If you can match that and the production he had last year, even the slight production he had last year against the pass, and then obviously the run was fantastic.
Yeah.
You match all of that with a plan, the mental game, some attitude and physicality in your game that Von Miller's been trying to instill in him, bring that dog out of him, as he said.
Dog.
You instill all of that in it and you bring it all together and you can really have yourself something special in Greg Rousseau. So he's going to be someone that I want to have my eyes on for this game. I don't think he's going to play a whole lot. We'll see. But he's someone that I believe has been rising specifically because of those little nuances to pass rushing that we've been getting wind of. The fact that he has developed in that way is absolutely massive because that is the final step. Once he can start to build a base in terms of the pass rush plan, then it's just about growing that base. And from there, it's really a lot easier to get it going once it's already started.
He talked about it in OTAs that one of the things he wanted to show this year and that he worked on this offseason was pass rush plan and moves. He said moves like 17 times. That's funny. It's all that gunpowder and gasoline that Von is feeding him. That was a great line. You know, when they asked Rousseau, like, oh, you know, what are you trying to show? What are you working on? He literally said moves like 5-6 times in the span of like 45 seconds. And he talked about specifically doing things in the first quarter and second quarter that he can come back to later or use those as setup moves to get the offensive lineman thinking and then counter and do something else.
That's so advanced mentally for a second-year player.
Big time. And he's a smart guy. When you hear him speak, like he's got a high football IQ, which shouldn't surprise us at this point. Like that's what the bit, not that any NFL player is dumb or doesn't know football, but it
what
seems
the
that the
Bills look for.
They gravitate towards a high football IQ. And also, again, whether coincidence or not, those types of things are what Von Miller has excelled at. People talk about, you know, the bend and the athleticism and the burst, and rightfully so. He's a tremendous athlete. But his mental side, Von Miller we've said it so much on the show, he is the definition of somebody who has honed their craft. He is a professional pass rusher. Like
Mhm.
you got guys who are like designated hitters in baseball, and then you got guys
Yeah.
who are like professional hitters. The
Yeah.
way they like diagnose and dissect how pitchers pitch and how to use the whole field and what they do with angles and velocity and everything. That's what Von Miller is.
Mhm.
How he sets offensive linemen up. He does things in the first quarter that he knows offensive linemen are going to be thinking about in the fourth quarter, and then he sets them up and does something else. Like his mental side is so strong, and we know his moves and his counters and everything. And I'm right there with you. I was very impressed with Gregory Rousseau in the scrimmage. He was showing. I tweeted it out last week. He was showing sync in the timing with his
Mm.
feet and his hands. His hands weren't ahead of his feet. His feet weren't ahead of his hands. Everything just seemed in unison and just
Yeah.
seemed in lockstep. I also think 2-point Gregory Rousseau is much more comfortable as a pass rusher than hand in the ground Gregory Rousseau. Greg Rousseau was used in a 2-point stance a lot in Miami. I think he's much more comfortable in that world. And again, coincidentally, whether or not that's coming into this defense a little more because Von Miller's coming in,
Right.
Von Miller likes to operate in a 2-point stance, coincidence or not, we'll see. But Rousseau had moves where he was just beating hands so quickly. And what's nice with how big he is, if he takes 2 steps because of how big his
Mhm.
gait is, he's almost already past an offensive lineman. So if he can take those steps with burst and with pace and then use his hands, he had a couple reps in the scrimmage where he took 2 steps, and after the first one, he kind of like gave that dead leg hezzy, put that next leg down with a power step, and then quickly swiped the hands, leaned, and got around the edge. I have not seen that level of technique from him at all in
No.
the NFL or
Yeah.
at all last year.
Exactly.
No, when he was winning versus the run or the pass, it was with strength and using that long arm and getting
Mhm.
physical and shedding. He has now shown technical ability,
Mhm.
or at the very least, a mental side of his game that is
Yeah.
now manifesting when it comes to the pass rush, which if you watch the way he played the run last year, which I know you did because we grind the out of film, he plays the run with a high football IQ. It's not just long arm and strength.
Yeah,
It's
really.
long arm, and he's using the physical tools and violence, but they're all coming from a setup mentally. He's
Yeah.
attacking outside shoulders with the idea of forcing a running back inside, and he knows it's coming. He's like, all right, cool, shed, make the tackle. He's now translating that mental side to the pass rush. And man, that's huge. If you got an edge who is a rookie, was one of the top 5 run defenders at his position in all of football. And now if you can add some pass rush productivity and plan and technique to his game, he is big time up there for me. I think his stock is up, which I think is really saying something for me, at least, because I had high expectations for him already, given his rookie year. He's big time stock up. Ed Oliver, the same. I'm not even going to go into Oliver too much. I think he was one of the best interior defenders in all of football last year. People just didn't pay attention to him because he didn't have
Mhm.
the sack numbers. He was a
Yep.
force and a monster last year. Also, stock up. I'm going to mention a little outside contender, much like I did last year. Maybe I'm just setting myself up to get my heart broken again.
Let's see, who is it?
AJ Epinesa, like he
Okay. Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
and again, he did this last year, so I'm not going to
He
get too
did.
high on him, but he just keeps winning in camp and in scrimmages. His strong get off the line, hand technique, clearance. The big thing for me with him is what does he look like setting the edge against the run? And
Mm.
can he consistently get pressure to the quarterback when it's not with a speed rush move, attacking the outside shoulder and trying to bend the corner and
Yeah.
turn in his arc? What does he do? He's one to keep an eye on game time wise, because at the very least, if we're looking at everybody's floors, even if Rousseau didn't progress in his pass rush, okay, your floor is like, okay, I'm still a top 5 run defender at my position. That's still pretty
Yeah.
good. I'll take that. Even if he never gets better as a pass rusher, that would be disappointing. But that means his floor is really, really good run defender.
Mhm.
Okay, AJ Epinesa's floor is just question marks. You don't
Yep.
know. It's sporadic. Stock down potentially. Um, or maybe not even stocked. I don't even know what he is at this point. Like Boogie Basham, I don't know what he is. I don't see anything
I'm
really
even
good.
on him right now.
I just don't see anything good. I don't really see anything bad. I don't know what he is. Like he lost weight coming into this year to try and be more lighter and bursty and effective. I haven't seen it translate in anything that I've seen live. He's another one who I have my eyes on coming into this game.
I've heard that he's been winning reps, but
Yes.
brought back to the offensive line thing. If he's winning reps against a depleted offensive line, I'm not going to put a ton of stock into that.
And he's
yet.
winning reps against like the third team offensive line. It's not like, man, you should have seen Boogie Basham work Deion Dawkins today. It's like, no, he worked somebody who might not make this team. And again, I don't want to take anything away from anyone, but iron sharpens iron, not like a feather sharpens iron. It's not the same thing. And then pieces as a whole, the rest of it, I'm very intrigued. Daquan Jones has looked really good at times, as has Settle. I'm interested to see how all that comes along. Everyone else, I think, has been status quo. Nice to hear that Shaq has been popping a little bit more recently.
Yeah, every now and again. Yep.
But I think to harken back to a point that you made on Disguised Coverage when we did the top storylines to watch for in training camp, I think something to watch for in this game against the Colts Saturday is the rotations and the usage. Who is getting used in what alignments? What type of fronts are they using? What type of situational packages are we seeing? How is that rotation shaking out? Granted, we're not going to know fully because Von's not going to play and maybe Ed doesn't even play, but how everyone gets used is something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
Let's go to the linebackers. I think I can confidently say there's really not too much to speak about for Edmonds and Milano. They are who they are. But anybody aside from that, stock up, stock down for the linebackers?
I got three, not necessarily a lot to talk about with all three, but three that I'm very interested in and I'm going to have my eyes on through training camp. Dodson, Bernard, and Spector. Dodson so far, obviously being listed as the third linebacker on the depth chart, absolutely massive for him, ego-wise, whatever it may be. It's big for him to get that spot.
He keeps both in camp and then in the scrimmage Friday when the Bills go in 3 linebacker sets, as a base, he's coming on with the first team guys every time.
There you go. So love to see that for him. He was always someone I believed in, even since, his UDFA days, someone I always liked. So it's glad to see that he's developing in the system and that they have confidence in him. That being said, Bernard has had a good camp from all reports. And I think this is somewhat strategic from the Bills to list him as the 4th linebacker or not the 3rd linebacker, light a fire under him and make him work hard to earn that spot. Don't just give it to him. So I'll be very interested to see the battle between those two because it probably is pretty close and see what the drop off is. How much, if we see Bernard with 1s this preseason, how much you're seeing Dodson even sneak in with 2s, or, is it going both ways or is it just getting Bernard more snaps, stuff like that. Then I see it in the chat a little bit. The Andre Smith suspension. This is kind of why I'm talking about Baylon Spector. It really puts the back end of the linebacker group, that whole battle it's really up for grabs.
And it's so special teams heavy.
It's so special teams dependent. So I really want to see how it shakes out, how much they're used on defense, how much is it going to be dependent on that special teams role. But Baylon Spector has been making plays in camp. He's one of those guys that's just, he finds himself near the ball, kind of very heady player, versatile to an extent, a little bit more limited in that versatility than Bernard is. But he's still an interesting player, especially someone that could round out the back end of a depth chart at that position and definitely give some contributions on special teams. So he's going to be someone that I want to see. Obviously a late round pick. I'm going to be interested in all rookies for this first game, but he's an interesting one because he has a real shot given the suspension to Andre Smith to make this roster.
Very fair. Very fair. I want to pull up a quick comment from Nick saying that Rousseau had the highest play stop percentage rate, a little cover 1 nugget right there. Yeah, just in case those of you who don't know, Gregory Rousseau led all edges in stops last year, and he also led them in stop percentage as well. So he was tops in terms of volume and in terms of efficiency. And he was also 5th in run stop win rate, which is an ESPN metric. So no matter how you slice it, he crushed the run stopping piece.
No matter how you slice it, Nick clearly watches the show.
I mean, you should. Everyone should. But I'm probably biased. Some people don't like us, but to each their own. Terrell Bernard is the big stock up for me in this group. I've been impressed with his coverage ability. The things that we loved about him from coverage, but also from that blitzing ability. You and I both love his ability to come forward. He's showing violence when he comes forward.
Just head on fire.
Yes, he's either getting through or he's causing havoc because he's
Yeah.
running somebody over and driving somebody into the backfield.
Drawing
Like, there is,
attention because of how
yes,
fast he's coming. In one way,
every
it's an impact.
boom. Every time he blitzes, you want to watch him because he's either getting into the backfield to make a play or it's just an explosion and he's detonating on somebody who's trying to block him. And I want to know where he lines up. What does he do? If we're looking at the depth chart, as you mentioned, you've got him lined up as the, number 2 linebacker behind Tremaine Edmonds at the middle linebacker spot, which, again, functioning however they, choose to line up this defense. But Milano is your Sam, Edmonds is the Mike, and Tyrell Dodson is the weak side linebacker, or your Will, as your starters. But then Bernard, again, is number 2 after Edmonds. Everybody's been talking about all offseason. Is he here to take Milano's spot? Is he here to be a depth guy? Is he here to be a jack of all trades? Is he here for Edmonds? So on and so forth. I want to see where he gets used on Saturday. Is he the Mike? Is he the Will? Is he blitzing? How much coverage is he doing? How much pattern matching are we seeing? How much man coverage are we seeing? What type of role and effectiveness are we seeing from him? Horrible time for a cough. I want to see what he looks like because I like him. But with offensive line concerns, I'm still sitting here going, Dylan Parham was there, and the Bills took Terrell Bernard. And I like Bernard. I've seen a lot of good flashes. His stock is definitely up. I saw right on day one of camp when he matched Dawson Knox coming on a drag in red zone and stuck with him, and Josh Allen tried to make a tight throw, and it got into Knox's hands, and Bernard got his hand in there and ripped it right out. Not to mention in the scrimmage, at points with the second team, Bernard also had a green dot and was also calling plays for the second team defense. So you're having him and Dodson both do that. But we've heard so much about Bernard's mental game. Leslie Frazier talking about he's one of those guys who can take the classroom to the grass and just how smart he is and how well he picks everything up. And Dave Aranda talked so highly of him. And we know McDermott and Aranda are close. And everything you hear about Bernard is just the stereotypical things that Sean McDermott loves. He's a heady player. He works hard. He's a good dude. He does all the little things, first guy in, last guy out, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But then you see him on the field and, he makes plays and he flashes. I want to see how he continues to flash. And then the rest of the group, for me, is all I just want to see how it shakes out. We know how important special teams are for Dodson and Andre Smith and Giles Harris and then potentially Spector. How do they perform in special teams, but also how do they perform on the field? Because even Tyler Matakevich, right? Like, he's a special teams guy.
He makes plays when he's out there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I know he comes in like a cleanup role when games are out of hand, but
he's motivated, man.
He makes plays with the second team defense when they're, coming in to face Houston at the end or Washington at the end. Like, he gets interceptions. He gets his hand on the ball. So very interested to see how the rest of these young guys shake out and what their usage looks like. Again, I think for the linebackers to keep an eye on this Sunday, like Kendall said, and like I'm, echoing here, how are they used? What situations? Keep your eyes on who is calling plays, both in terms of in the huddle, but also who's checking pre-snap. Who's the one making the adjustments on the field? Who's doing the communicating? Who's doing the barking? Who's doing the directing? Who is controlling things from a leadership perspective and a mental perspective on the field? And then how are they lining up? Who's lining up where? Who's blitzing? How are they being used? Big thing to watch for come this Saturday at 4. It's a weird thing, weird time slot. That's like a December game time slot. So weird.
Yeah.
But
it is.
Such as life. The secondary, let's talk about it wholly. Actually, let's start with the corners first here, and then we'll move on to safeties if we have any thoughts there. Let's start with corner. I know I feel strongly about some corners.
You do. I know you do.
I'll let you go first here on the corners.
All right. Well, I really only have one that's trending upwards. I have another one that's kind of like on the cusp, but the one that's trending upwards is Christian Benford.
Yes.
All reports have been that he's just climbing up the depth chart in terms of who he's getting his reps against, who he's getting his opportunities against, and he's just making plays. And I mean, to be fair, that was his MO coming out of Villanova. Dude has a lot of ball production, a lot of PBUs, a lot of interceptions at his time at Nova. So that much is clear. He knows how to make plays on the football.
Not in the tape that we saw.
It's nice to see that it's translating because the tape that we saw told us a different story. So it's really nice to actually hear that, though. when he's practicing against, upper echelon talent
Mhm.
at what we know, the wide receiver and quarterback position of this offense. It's really great to hear that he is translating that ball production to the next level, and the game isn't too fast for him in that regard. So that is exciting. He's someone that I'm going to have my eyes on against the Colts. I'm sure he's going to get plenty of reps against the Colts in
Yeah,
this game.
for sure.
So I'm going to have my eye on him because he was someone during the draft process. I was infuriated after we drafted him that we only had one game on him. I was so upset. I wanted to learn more about a smaller school guy, and we only had one game against Penn State, and this perfect timing. So I'll finish my stuff up real quick so you can get to that comment because that's perfect.
No, you talk. Yeah, I'm good.
No, I need you to talk. So my next one is Dane Jackson. I've heard good reports about him. Also, obviously, we saw like a video of Diggs making that nasty one-handed grab.
And Dane fell down.
Dane was in the dirt
He
on
slipped.
that play.
He didn't get like juked completely. Like you can tell that he tripped
But
up.
he
It's
was
not
in
ideal.
trail to begin with.
Yes.
Like he probably, they clipped it out. He probably lost off the line of scrimmage. He was in trail, and then the shimmy at the top of the route got him.
Yeah, I'm hoping he was supposed to be in trail and not supposed to be over the top because that's even worse.
That makes it a lot worse, but who knows? That's obviously out of our hands. We don't know that. But either way, I think the main thing, I'm gonna go quick on these. The two is Dane Jackson, Kyer Elam. I have them both as even. None of them are one way or the other. Dane Jackson is even because he's shown exactly what we know about him. He has matched that expectation. There are areas that he has to improve, and those are usually the areas that he's losing in camp. And then there are areas where he's just so dependable and where he's rock solid for this defense, and you know what you're going to get from him. So that's kind of where I am with him. I see him kind of on that cusp of being upwards trending, but I think he's really falling back into that dependability mold. So I keep him as even. And then for Kyer Elam, I have him as even because obviously he started off slow. We've heard reports that he's kind of getting up to speed and that challenging of him, iron sharpening iron, all that stuff. Some of that kind of leads me to think it's a little propaganda-ish, but I don't know for sure because obviously we haven't seen a whole lot of tape with him. But from what we saw in the college tape, what we evaluated from him, I had my concerns coming out of the draft. And everything that we've seen so far from Elam and all the reports we've been fed, it seems like he's falling exactly where I had him ranked or my expectations of him, those concerns I had, they're showing, and those areas that he's good, they've also been shown. So it's kind of just like par for the course with me, where my evaluation of him and his college tape, especially the 2021 tape, it seems to be extrapolating over to this training camp so far. And I still have high hopes for him, but it's not necessarily behind schedule for me because I kind of expected it to an extent, if that makes sense.
I think that's very fair. And I'm in a similar boat with that mentality. Real quick, I wanted to get these two questions from DF, who says, with Dotson playing so well, do we go back to a 4-3 base more often on running downs? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Unless we're playing run-heavy teams like New England last year, which also leads into Charles's question where he says, what role do you envision for Bernard this year? Would they go 3 linebackers versus run-heavy teams like the Pats, Titans, Ravens, etc.? I think that's where you see the Dodson Bernard come in, like it depending on what you're looking for. Again, I think the plus with Bernard is if he gives you a linebacker fit opportunity, but he can also cover, you're not really losing too much from a coverage perspective when you put him in. I will say from a frame standpoint, Bernard is small for a linebacker. Seeing him in person, if you took numbers and names off of jerseys, he's bigger than Taron Johnson, but if you looked at him and Taron Johnson fast, they almost look the same size. Granted, Taron Johnson's bigger for a nickel corner. He's like 192
Yeah,
pounds.
sure.
But Bernard isn't. If you're looking for someone who really can like thump and stuff the run, I think it's more of Dodson. Bernard is still going to be that penetrator type, like slashing, attacking, blowing things up, and like a missile. So it depends on what you're trying to get from your run defense. If you're trying to 2-gap and plug holes, I think it's more the Dodson piece. If you're trying to penetrate and cause havoc, you're looking at Bernard. Again, a lot of it, that's why Saturday is going to be so fun. We get to see how Bernard is used. Not only will that tell us about Bernard, it'll also tell us about Dodson and how some things are going to shake out. Corners. I like I'm trying to phrase this like the right way. Elam isn't, to your point, he's not behind schedule for me. I expected him. I don't think he had the polish that a lot of people thought he did. Even the people that came out and were like, man, his Alabama tape was great. I really didn't think it was. I also thought it was super grabby, like which is also rearing. Actually, let me get there. I'll take it bit by bit. I feel like there were expectations that were set for him, not from myself, but from a lot of people that thought like, man, what an amazing pick. He brings his notebook. He studies. Like, this is amazing. Look how big and fast he is. He went to Florida. This is going to be great. I have high hopes for him because of his physical God-given abilities and what Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier and that coaching staff have shown they can get out of players. Like, no disrespect to Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace does not have the physical tools that Kyer Elam has. So if they could get number 2 corner production from Levi Wallace, imagine what they could get from Kyer Elam. But there's a trade-off. Levi Wallace gave you a high floor. He did not have the ceiling that Kyer Elam has, but Elam has a lower floor, higher ceiling, lower floor. We'll see what he can be. I expected him to have to learn, expected him to have to get off the grabbiness. There are some things for me that are a little worrisome, like the fact that they had to put the boxing gloves on him because he was getting too grabby. And then I combine that with what I've seen in practice and what I've seen at camp and what I saw at the scrimmage, where I was talking to you offline about it, where granted we don't know what coverage they were in, but I kind of have a good idea because of how much I study and what I know. And he was just getting beat underneath nonstop. And it wasn't just against Diggs. It was against a variety of receivers. But what's more worrisome is it's just receivers are sinking their hips and they're down into their break and they're about to come out of it. And he's still in his back pedal, or he's still in his bail technique, and he's not reading and reacting. You're seeing him getting lost in some coverage pieces. But again, I think that's all part of it. He's more comfortable in press man. He's not being used in that way. I think they're trying to push him to the areas in which he is most uncomfortable in order to get him comfortable in those areas.
Exactly.
And so why, what better time to do that than in training camp and against a variety of receivers? And I've also seen a lot of people as well. I put out a tweet today about how good Trent McDuffie is doing. And people are saying like, oh, well, the Chiefs receivers are terrible. One, they're not as bad as you think they are.
They're
Two,
not.
Everybody's like, oh, well, like, because Diggs is going up against Elam and Elam has to go against Diggs. And it's not always against Diggs.
It's everyone.
He's losing against a variety of receivers on the Buffalo Bills. And he's losing in ways that are a little worrisome. But again, I don't think this is, he's a bust. He's terrible. This isn't going to work out. Much like what you said, I personally expected this. I thought there was a learning curve. It's why I said when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, when me and Eric were all on here, someone asked the question about the rotation. And I thought even when Trey came back, I thought Dane and Kyer would rotate.
Yeah.
And to the question about Benford, I don't want this to be disrespectful to Christian Benford at all, because he's busted his butt and he's looked good. But the fact that Kyer Elam has opened the door for Christian Benford says something.
Yeah.
And maybe it says something more to Benford because he's just been crushing it and it's a feather in his cap. But I think with everything, it always meets in the middle. So that means Benford is doing a good job, and maybe he kicked that door open, but Kyer opened it a little bit for him. And that to me is a little, not discouraging, but you'd like to see a little better. But by no means is it stock is down. This is terrible.
Not like that.
I expected him to be grabby. I expected him to have to learn. We've talked about it, like a lot of what he did from a physicality standpoint in college. It's not going to fly in the NFL. They don't let you get that grabby, especially downfield like he was. Dane, I think, has been, like you said, as advertised. He's a really good zone corner. He's reliable. He's physical. We just know his physical limitations. We know speed and size and what he can do from that perspective. He's going to get beat in those areas. But we talked about his stats in several ways. He was a really good zone corner last year, whether you watch it on tape or you watch it in the metrics or look at it in the metrics. Dane, I think, is still status quo. I know he struggled as of late, but Benford has to be clearly like the high. You got a guy who
Yeah.
is an afterthought in the draft who was talked about, oh yeah, maybe, you know, envisioning him at safety and going to safety. And now he's getting run with the first team defense at corner, and he's holding his own. And,
Yeah.
you know, shout out to him. I think he has to be the biggest. Again, a lot of this for stock up and stock down goes hand in hand with what your expectations are. And I think
100%.
Bedford is, I want to show me someone who had on the bingo card Christian Benford getting run with the ones, and not just like, oh yeah, he saw 2 snaps. He's getting
mixed in like
significant reps with the ones. And comment here from DF saying grabby corners coming out of college is not uncommon as you think. Oh, I'm well aware. Like, I grind a ton of college tape, but when you're putting him in perspective with a lot of the other corners we studied coming into this draft, he's more grabby than most. I mean, it's one of the, especially if I'm comparing him to a corner who I really like Trent McDuffie.
Right.
There's not a lot of grab with McDuffie. Now, maybe you want to say he can't grab because his arms are so short and he can't reach, but fair enough. You see, oh, that was funny. Bills Mafia STS says Benford's parents didn't have that on their bingo cards. That's very good. Yeah, grabbiness is common, but to the level at which it was present for, I think it was almost like a technique piece for him with how grabby he was. He wasn't grabbing because, oh, he got beat and let me grab. He was grabbing by default. And I think when you, again, it was why I had him ranked where I did, when you compared him to a lot of the other corners in this draft who we like towards our top tier, the reason I had him in tier 2 was because of some of those things. But again, you pair him with Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, and it's like, well, they can clean that up and they can add the polish and they can add the technique and so on and so forth. What does the comment here say? My guess,
Steven nailed this.
Ann is down on him, but doesn't want to extinguish Bills fans' hope, so he's trying to be optimistic sounding, but he's underwhelmed so far. No, I'm not underwhelmed. I'm whelmed. I'm whelmed. I expecting. I want to go back to this comment. He was grabbing because he knew he could get away with it in college. Yeah, but other corners weren't grabbing that much. That's my point. Like, studying the tape of him versus these other corners, he's grabbing way more. And even if he's grabbing because he can get away with it, cool.
It's not a good practice.
No, that's like cheating all year and then
knowing you won't be able to later.
Knowing you can on the final exam. You haven't learned anything. And then when you have to take the final exam, it's like, uh-oh, I've been cheating all year and this isn't good now. He's in the final exam and but yeah, I'm not underwhelmed with Elam. For me, again, I think he's trending with what he was. He's a toolsy guy. He's got a lot of blood in the stone. It's all about squeezing it, moving it forward. I have my eyes on him big time for this Colts game. I think we're going to continue to see him get put in more uncomfortable positions. So more off coverage, forcing him to get acclimated to that lifestyle in that coverage piece. So that way they don't allow him to rely on that crutch of press man or using his physical tools. I think they want to make him uncomfortable and put in those situations. So I want to see, what does he look like in his bail, in his back pedal, in his reads? How is he reading routes? And how is he reading, progression from the quarterback? What does he look like in his timing? What does he look like at the catch point? I don't think he's stock for me. I don't think he's stock up or stock down. I'm whelmed. I had hoped he would be farther than he is now. But again, it's still super early. It is what it is. Safeties. Hyde, Poyer, we know what they are. But with Poyer being out, we've seen action for Jaquan Johnson. We've seen action for DeMar Hamlin. Have either of them done anything to sway you or, move you away from them positively or negatively?
Not really. I mean, I'm excited about all of them, and I'll even add in McLeod. I mean, I'm excited that it's almost a blessing in disguise that they've been getting more work with the ones, and even more favorably, I guess, having the chance to work with just Hyde, because more likely than not, if something were to happen during the season, it's probably not going to be Hyde and Poyer at the same time. So they're going to, one of them is going to have to step up and work with them. It's not likely going to be Johnson and Hamlin working in tandem some point this regular season. So it's nice to see that they're going to build some camaraderie with Hyde early on this preseason and learn how he works and how to work with him symbiotically. So I'm excited about that, but it's clear so far that the confidence of the coaching staff is with Jaquan Johnson first. If someone's going down, it's Jaquan Johnson. He has been making some plays here and there, so that is exciting that he's following through on that, because we have seen, like back in the Dean Marlowe days, like Marlowe would get the nod over him,
Hmm.
even when there was a chance for Johnson to get some run with the defense. So it is
Yeah,
exciting to
real
see
early in
him.
Johnson's days when he was
Yeah,
like first year, second.
but it's exciting to see now that he's being looked at as a depth piece at safety, not just a depth piece at safety that's really only being used for special teams. It is nice to see that he's breaking into his actual position, and the
Mhm.
coaching staff is placing some trust there. Furthermore, Hamlin, to me, I view Hamlin more as the playmaker of the two. I think
Mhm.
he makes more plays. He's more versatile. He's
Yes.
capable of doing more things that a modern day safety is going to be asked to do. Move all over the field, be able to drop into cover two, cover half the field, be the center fielder, just be that one man in cover one, or even drop into the nickel position,
Mhm.
fit the run, or guard a slot wide receiver, whatever it is. I think Hamlin has that skill set, and I'm very excited about his skill set and ability to develop with this team. And the fact that he's been making plays with his opportunities
Mm.
so far in camp, that's been very encouraging to me. So I'm super excited about him. And then hopefully Nick McLeod can stack together two
Mhm.
good preseasons, because he had a good one last year, and reports have been good about him. People have been giving him praise. Fraser Bean, Poyer has even been giving him
He was
praise.
rolling with the first safety pairing in the scrimmage last week was Hyde and Jaquan Johnson. Safety tandem 2 was Hamlin and Nick McLeod.
There you go. Like last year, it was the Josh Thomas show.
Yeah.
Like everyone was talking about how great Josh Thomas was at safety, and he was making a lot of plays. Who knows? I mean, McLeod was making plays last year at outside corner.
Yeah, he had that pick 6 that got called back.
He did, but he also had some pass breakups too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how he performs this year in training camp at the safety position specifically. But I'm going to have my eyes, at least to the safety position, specifically on Hamlin, because he's
Mhm.
someone I was very, very excited to get my hands on in the draft last year. He was someone I was very high on during that draft process, super versatile player. So to actually see him get a handful of reps this year, it's going to be really exciting.
I'm I'm torn on actually not even torn. I'm whelmed again with Johnson and
I
Hamlin.
love this.
I don't think either one has really separated themselves from the other so
Mm,
far in what I've seen. I think you're spot on with Hamlin. He is the more versatile of the two safeties. He can play post safety. He can play in the box. He can cover in the slot. He can do a variety of things. I think Jaquan Johnson's ability as a box safety is better than anything Hamlin does. His
mhm,
ability to fit the run and come forward and play in the hook curls and the flats like he did at Miami
mhm.
is spot on. But again, he lacks that kind of versatility. And I don't think I've seen anything from either. I think I'm new, like not stock up. I'm not stock down. I think I'm
Yeah,
even. I had hoped that, with Poyer being out, one of them would turn the corner and it would be like,
yeah,
man, Jaquan Johnson's flashing, or man, DeMar Hamlin. This is fantastic. I just saw this.
yeah. It's absolutely
Thank you
awesome.
so much. John is man, he was crushing it last week on Disguise coverage when I was
It's
riding
every show,
solo. It
man.
is every show. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the super chat and the comment as well, saying stock up, cover one, Bills coverage. We are stock up. We are trajecting upwards. Thank you,
Oh
John.
yeah,
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's Antha Welmer. That's funny.
yeah. I laughed at that
That's good.
before.
Yeah, I had hoped that one would separate from the other, and I had hoped that
Mhm.
we'd be sitting here going, so and so is
Yeah.
clearly safety 3, and I don't think we've hit that for
No.
either of them. And I had my eyes on them big time when it came to the scrimmage, and no, I think I'm still in the same spot. If I
Yeah.
had to put one in, honestly, it depends on the matchup. I think I'd probably lean Jaquan Johnson, but I could be swayed either way. I think the biggest stock up in this whole group is probably Nick McLeod, just with him moving into safety, and he looks
Mm.
natural.
And
Like
doing well. Yeah.
yeah, he's doing well. He's got the length, he's got the speed. I think the biggest thing for him is how does he look coming from depth and either fitting the run or
Mm.
making tackles. Like that is
Yeah.
such a hard thing. And it's one of the things that makes Hyde and Poyer so tremendous is their ability to
Right.
come from depth in a variety of ways against the pass, but again, in the
Yeah.
run and fit the run, make tackles. That's a very hard thing to do, especially someone who isn't that experienced in it and is new to that piece. So I'm very interested to see what he does because we know these guys are going to get a ton of burn. Poyer is obviously not playing in this preseason game.
Exactly.
Hyde isn't going to play, or even if Hyde does play, maybe it's a series or two at most. So you're going to see a ton of Jaquan Johnson. You're going to see a ton of DeMar Hamlin, Thomas, McLeod. You're going to see a ton of that safety work, and I'm excited to see what they bring. I just want to see somebody separate themselves as the clear safety 3. And Jaquan is the vet in the room, but it also means because he's been here the longest, he potentially has his contract up the earliest. So, ooh. Thank you very much for the super chat, TF. You've been crushing it with your comments and thoughts, and thank you for joining us live. And thank you for your super chat donation. I like the shade of green.
That is nice.
It's like mint chocolate chip ice cream, and I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. He says, do we have a placeholder yet on special teams? I know I am early. What do you mean by placeholder? Like people playing special teams?
I feel like he means like the holder for kicks.
The actual holder? Ariza's been doing well. We know Hawk is tried and true and fantastic. Ariza has been doing well as a holder. Bass has been crushing kicks, much like he has with Hawk. So I think there's a feather in the cap for that. If that's not what you meant, circle back. You obviously don't. Kick holder. Yes. Oh,
there we go.
Okay, you were right.
We got it.
Yeah. Ariza's been getting a bunch of work there. Bass has been taking a variety of kicks at a variety of distances. Ariza was the primary holder for the scrimmage last week, and Bass nailed all of his kicks, if I am correct there. And again, he had multiple 52, 53-yard kicks. Ariza was the holder. So at the very least, we're not seeing any vulnerability or deficiency, which is all you want to see because potentially he has the bigger leg and the bigger opportunity to change field position, provided he can correct some of the hang time and distance things. Yeah, and I think, again, to round out the safety group, I'm excited to see Hamlin and Johnson and that whole crew Saturday against Indianapolis because we just need to shake the trees a little bit and see who comes out. Because nobody's really separated themselves. Like again, if you were like, oh, Jaquan Johnson's going to start this game, I'd be like, okay. Or if you're like, DeMar Hamlin starts this game, I'd be like, okay. I think there's different strategic ways they can be used. But actually, and I wanted to go back to where there was this question from Nick. Nick said Hamlin is more like Poyer and Johnson's more like Hyde, ? No.
I feel like I'd flip that, right?
I would. Well, I don't think Johnson is like either because both Hyde and Poyer are so versatile. Hyde or Jaquan Johnson is he's smaller, but he's more of your Cam Chancellor type of safety. He's built to be around the box, whether he's blitzing, whether he's covering in the hook curls or screaming out to the flats and buzzing down or fitting the run. He's designed to be around the line of scrimmage. He can function as a post safety and deep, your standard free safety look, but that's not where his skill set lends itself because of his, speed. But again, even around the box, he's undersized for a safety. So that's where those limitations come in, but he's tremendously heady. He's always around the ball. That's why being in the box, despite being smaller, fits him more. I would say if we're looking for anyone who's like Hyde and Poyer, again, because they're so versatile and they're both safeties at this point, not a free, not a strong, it's going to be Hamlin. I would actually, if I had to lean, I would say Hamlin is more like Hyde and Johnson is like neither. But if I had to be pushed,
to be fair though, like
more towards Poyer.
Poyer was more of that like come up, fit box the run safety, type of box safety.
That's why I would push Johnson
developed into what this interchangeable safety is now. So
that's why I would push Johnson more towards the Poyer side. But again, I think Hamlin is closer to Hyde though. Like again, think about Hyde before he came to Buffalo.
I know, right? Yeah, Iowa and Green Bay, like the trajectory is very similar.
Exactly.
Hamlin defended the slot a lot in Pittsburgh.
Big time. I think his most snaps came in the slot.
Yeah, I don't think it was even traditional.
The only thing we're missing from Hamlin to make it more like Hyde would be punt return and kick return reps.
I don't think he does that. He plays special teams though.
He does, but just not in that way. Hamlin is more like Hyde. Johnson would be more like Poyer, but Johnson is less like Poyer than Hamlin is like Hyde, if that makes sense.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pretty smart. Kendall, we've been going here for an hour and 43. Now we're starting to wind down. Any final thoughts on risers, fallers, things coming into this game? Anything that you haven't mentioned that you really have your eye on, what you're looking to see? Is it on field? Is it play calling? Is it rhythm? Is it structure? Is it scheme? Is there anything? What do you got to round
Trying to
this
go through my notes and double check that there wasn't a player I missed that I'm gonna have my eyes on.
Did you write your notes in crayon?
Well, I did color them,
Makes
but
sense.
not
Color
with
in the
crayon. One player in particular that I didn't mention before that I do want to see is Boogie. Obviously, Ant and I, through multiple times, if no one's picked up on it, we differ a lot on our draft evaluation of Boogie Basham.
Yes.
Where we've come to now, we've met in the middle a lot more, and by saying that, I've just come down a lot more.
I was gonna say
he's still where
lower.
he is. I just came down more, but he's had a solid camp. Like, from everything I've heard, there are good reports on him, but like I've said with all the other defensive linemen, it's with a struggling offensive line right now, a patchwork injured offensive line. So I really want to see what it looks like against a good offense. Like, the Colts are known to be a good offensive line year after year. And I mean, obviously the depth pieces are probably what he's going to be going against, but either way, it's still a well-coached group.
Just
so
give
I'd
us
like
something.
to see, I'd like to see if we can see more of that pass rush repertoire. You know, in college, we used to see him just spamming the swim move, spamming the spin move, just not really not really like refined with when to use it, just knows he needs to use it every single time. So I want to see some of that refinement, see if Von Miller has, rubbed off on him in that way in terms of the mental side of things, and then see if that translates to the physical side of things and match it all together. So he's going to be someone that I hadn't mentioned through this show that I am going to be intently watching during this game, see if there is any improvement off of what he was last year, which was solid when he had opportunities, but those opportunities were fleeting because of potentially what he was doing in practice. So I'm very curious to see if he's going to be more dependable at that edge position.
I think that's fair. That's a good one. I have so many.
I know there's a lot to watch. It's the first game, biggest roster size of the season. And it's only natural.
And it's all those depth pieces and the rookies and the young guys. Like, what does the edge position look like? Like, what do we get from Epinesa? What do we get from Boogie? What are we seeing from Tim Settle? I'm even further down. Like, I want to see what Elianku looks like. I liked him last year. I want to see what he continues to do. What do we see from Christian Benford? What do we see from Kyer Elam? What do we get out of Cam Lewis? And how that moving and shaking happens. We talked about the safeties. I think for me, the top, I really want to see what the offensive line starts to look like. Even if it's just the depth guys, I don't care. I want to see what they look like, how they perform, how they hold up. I also want to see if we get any inkling of whether the Bills are running more zone or gap. You're obviously going to get a vanilla defensive game plan, a vanilla offensive game plan. But even within that, you can still start to see some tendencies arise. So I want to see what they're running in terms of zone or gap. Just because of how strong they finished the year with gap last year, which was a shift from what they had been traditionally, which was more balanced, but leaning more towards zone, like a 60-40 or 65-35 kind of split. And then by extension, how do the running backs factor? Who's fit for what scheme? We saw Singletary have success with gap. We know Zach Moss is good with zone from his time in Utah. We know Cook can do a little of both and can take advantage of some light box potential. How does he do against the pass? Receiver shaking out. Honestly, there's a ton to watch for. I'm very excited for this preseason game because there's not just one player to focus on, one side of the ball, one position grouping. This isn't like, oh, the offense is off the field. Okay, cool. I can change the channel or go do something else.
There's
like you want it. Even special teams, like how does Ariza look? How does Hawk look? Like, what do we get?
There's battles everywhere. This is a hard roster to make.
There is top to bottom, and there's a lot of moving and shaking to happen in the middle of, the second stringers and third stringers are yet to be decided for a lot of positions, let alone the special teams contribution and how that factors in. So, I'm very excited.
You know what I'm the most excited for, though? Film room next week. Next week is going to be a hoot. We're going to have film on this most recent game against the Colts. I'm beyond. Yes. Are you kidding me? Don't do this to me now.
Game? The Jags Raiders? We're doing film on Jags Raiders? The Hall of Fame?
Was that even a game?
Oh, that's rude.
I mean,
That's mean. I was mad there was a rain delay for a lightning delay. I
That
went to turn it on and I was like, this is in a delay. I was like, oh,
did
just
rattle
want to
me
see
a little bit.
football.
That did.
Yeah, I'm
rattle me a
very
little bit.
excited for that. It's
2022 NFL film, like Buffalo Bills NFL. It's really exciting to finally be back.
It's real. We are going to be back. And you will be joining me, like I mentioned earlier. Disguise coverage will be live immediately following the Bills Colts preseason game. We are going to be dissecting pros, cons, scheme, anything and everything, immediate reactions. So that's good from Michael. Can't wait for real football-ish film. So make sure you join Kendall and I live this Saturday, immediately following the Buffalo Bills preseason opener against the Indianapolis Colts. If you're feeling a little fantasy football action in between now and then, or at any point, sign up for Underdog Fantasy on the website or download the Underdog Fantasy app. And when you do, use promo code COVER1. That's cover and the number 1, all one word. And Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. So you have an opportunity to get free money up to $100 to play fantasy football. I love their best ball format. There's so much to do with them, honestly, but their best ball format is what gets me every time. I love drafting lineups now and leading up into the season and then not having to worry about tinkering with lineups because of how best ball functions. So there's so many options with them. Go check out Underdog Fantasy, sign up, use that promo code COVER1, get yourself free money and the opportunity and potential to win even more money. Thank you for joining us. This episode, tons of interactivity. We know this was less of a film-focused film room. We'd been kind of taking some weeks off. Just we were doing player interviews, and there's not really anything to dissect from a film perspective. But nonetheless, we wanted to deep dive into some things leading up to the preseason game. And then next week, you will see us, hopefully, knock on wood, don't want to jinx it, in our regular film room format, breaking down film for you from the all 22, like we will for the entire regular season. Again, knock on wood and fingers crossed. I'm very superstitious. You guys know the deal, and girls know the deal. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you for the super chats, the engagement, the questions, the thoughts, the comments, concerns, the kind words. Thank you for being here. Please drop a like on this video. If you are watching later, please drop a like as well. If you're watching here on YouTube now or later, please subscribe to the Cover One Film Room. If you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate and review, subscribe to the Cover One Film Room. I know it's corny, but it goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Thank you so much for joining us live or later, whatever have you. And many thanks to my co-host here on the show, Kendall Mursky, for staying up past his bedtime, climbing out of the crib and just, hanging with me and doing this. And
that's what's behind this thing. It's just
it's his crib with his little mattress and his Muppet Babies blanket. It's all just a good time. And I think it's very fitting that, we talked about this. This is also part of why we wanted to do this too, because we thought of doing no episode this week, but this also sets the table for when you and I reconvene Saturday on Disguise Coverage and we get to connect some dots and some pieces on what we talked about leading into this.
Yes, sir.
And then going into it. And very excited. Yeah, we ran long on this episode, but the viewership didn't drop.
No, it didn't.
And a lot of people have been noting that in the comments, and that is a testament to Bills Mafia and to the fan base who potentially appreciates the work that we put in. Thank you so much, Kendall, and everybody now, live, then, forever. I'm super tired. I'm going to go to sleep. We appreciate you more than you possibly know. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, taking care of one another, and are staying safe. Join us on Disguise Coverage for a post-game following immediately after the Bills-Colts preseason game. We will have film room breakdown in its regular format next Tuesday. Also join me for Disguise Coverage tomorrow night live at 6 p.m. Eastern start time, not 7. I will be joined by a very special guest, Mr. Ali Connolly, of Gridiron and The Guardian. He is tremendously smart and knowledgeable and intellectual when it comes to the game of football. We're going to talk Bills offense expectations for 2022, how they answer changing defensive trends and schemes that are being played in the NFL, and also just talking general X's and O's and scheme and what it all means. Very excited. So join me tomorrow on Disguise Coverage live at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then immediately following the Bills game this upcoming Saturday. For Mr. Kendall Mursky, for myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Eric Turner and Spirit, who stabbed us in the back and couldn't join us tonight. This has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Bills.